Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another Fratarcangeli Friday market update. What a week it's been, and what a beginning of April it has been as well. We had the peace talks this past weekend in Pakistan come up empty. I remember Saturday thinking, oh boy, here goes. And then, of course, on Sunday night, our president, Donald Trump, announced that they were going to have a blockade through the Hormuz Strait to control vessels coming in and out of the Iran ports. A very critical move, I believe. As of this morning, this AM, Iran has announced amongst the ceasefire, the Hormuz Strait is open. We have seen the stock market up over 1% across all major indices. We've seen oil come down to $85 or $83 a barrel, depending upon the moment you look. Let me remind everyone that oil spot per barrel has hit as high as $126 per barrel this last, give or take, 6 to 7 weeks. Let us all remember that the spot barrel for oil was at about $60 a barrel prior to this conflict. We're starting to see some leveling off, and I think it's a very clear sign that the U.S. is starting to take control of this next chapter and this contained but yet still geopolitical event that we're watching unfold. As we see things start to progress down the proper path, we're going to start to look for what's going to happen with the insurance of vessels and how that order goes about going forward. We all heard of Lloyd's of London backing away from being the primary insurer. What happens next is something we're going to watch very closely. We're also seeing that the purchase of oil coming through that area of the country, or excuse me, the world, is now being purchased in the US dollar, the petrodollar, versus the BRIC nations having their own currency. I think this is something to note. It's interesting that we're starting to see the news unfold here this morning, and we're starting to see more clarity as to how this is going to affect the next phase that's now, I think, turned to more of a peaceful solution as opposed to an elevated conflict. So good news on that front, and we're going to be watching very closely to see how this plays out. In addition to that, we're on the heels of, or beginning phases of, earnings season, and we're starting to see that the markets are seeing a recovery, a full recovery that is, and actually going into positive territory. And we saw the S&P 500 over this past 2 days hit new highs back to back. And in addition to that, we have the markets up, as mentioned earlier, well over 1%. We'll see how the remainder of this goes, but I'd say we're heading in very strong directions on the heels of seeing where earnings are going to end up for the first quarter. We originally called for 12.8% earnings growth year over year in Q1 2026. That's been upped recently by the companies that are getting ready or have announced to 13%. This marks the 6th consecutive quarter of double-digit earnings growth. Very exciting news, and there's 4 driving forces driving behind that. The AI and the mega cap leadership. We saw the technology trade come under pressure right around November of last year that has now seemed to turn more positive. In addition to the geopolitical de-risking that I mentioned earlier, and as well the strong corporate earnings that we're getting ready to monitor throughout this first quarter that's often running as of this week. And let's not forget the oversold situation in March, which, let me remind you all, March historically has been a pivotal month where we've seen the market pull back and reverse. I can give many examples that I've witnessed over my 31 years of doing this. March is a very critical month, and now we head into the April and summer months. We're going to watch very closely how the fundamentals start to take major front stage in how this market moves forward. But let me remind everyone, we have an election year upon us, the midterms. Historically, the midterms has seen power shift from one side back to the other side at a 90% clip. I had the benefit of interviewing Jeff Bush, one of the top political analysts, last week to talk about where he thinks things are heading. So we're going to be watching very closely. The general consensus is, as the Senate and the House currently have very slim margin leads for the Republicans, that the House will flip back to the Democrats. There's a probability that's higher than 70%, which would mean we have the Senate maintaining Republican control, maybe even gaining additional seats, and of course the presidential leadership in the Republican Party. So it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out throughout the remainder of this year through November with the election. And we'll be watching very closely on how to monitor and manage taking advantage of volatility that's typical in these types of election years. So good news on the horizon as we enter into the earnings season, and we're watching not only financials show very strong, not only earnings, but indications of expanded earnings. And we're going to watch for all the other sectors that are going to be coming out over the coming weeks. And let's not forget the pending Fed Chair Reserve new, call it voting in of Warsh, who we're expecting to take over for the current Fed Chair Powell. And that's going to be something we're going to be watching extremely closely to see how that comes through, because the Fed, of course, is a very critical component with interest rates and guidance and where inflation and how we want to contain and make sure our economy continues to allow the continued progression and expansion that we've seen now for several years. So we'll be watching very close. I think this is a market that brings a great deal of opportunity. Volatility is our friend. I've mentioned it many times. Fear and greed, we want to deviate from driving our decisions. When we see volatility, we want to take advantage of it with our longer-term objectives. So know this, over here at Fratarcangeli Wealth Management, our team is all hands on deck, excited and motivated to help guide and counsel you through the most trying times like we've had, and no dull moment here this year. And I'm very excited about not only the remainder of this year, but next year, which has been touted to be one of the most rewarding market years and that third year of a first-term presidency. So please stay tuned. I look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye for now.